So we're incredibly excited to get started. And with that, I'll pass it on to Jen-Marie.
Thanks everyone for joining. I'm Jen-Marie Prato, Director of Operations here at Acclaim, and today's conversation is grounded in reality. And it's in a reality that many organizations are facing. Supporting the employees that who operate in high pressure, high stakes environments where the impact of stress is not always visible, but always present. Three key realities that we're seeing is that the traditional approach is not working. Standardized process-driven models are not meeting the needs of complex human situations. Timing and connections change outcomes. And what that means is that early meaningful engagement is often the difference between recovery and prolonged absence. And then the third is that support systems have to be integrated and not siloed. What really matters, real success happens when employers, providers, and partners work in one coordinated system. Why this matters is that when these elements are missing, organizations see it. We see longer duration claims, we see increased costs, and most importantly, in disability management, the individuals who are not individuals and employees are not getting the support they need. My name is Jen-Marie Prato, as I said. I'm Director of Operations for Employer Services here at Acclaim Ability Management. And in my 15 plus years of working at Acclaim, I've worked closely with our first responders groups. I've had the honor of being hosted by police services around the province, attending briefings, attending firearms trainings and recertifications, doing ride-alongs, sitting in the call centers, watching the self-defense training, getting a tiny, tiny glimpse of the challenges that police service members face on a daily basis. I see the value in the work that goes into the mental health supports within this particular industry, and then in all safety-sensitive environments, and I see the challenges that they face when working with the public. Today, we're really fortunate to be joined by Erin Dale, whose work has been centered around supporting individuals in some of the most complex, high-risk environments, policing and first responders communities. And his experience offers a really unique lens into what effective support can really look like in practice. So I'm going to hand it to Erin to introduce himself and to jump into his area of expertise.
Thanks, Jan, and thanks, Lena. It's a real honor to be here. I appreciate what you guys are doing at Acclaim. I was at the first launch about a month ago and had a lot of fun. I kind of recognize some names here on the board, but thanks for bringing me on. And a little bit about me. I started in the military, actually, when I was about 19 years old, and I was doing part-time reserves while I was doing all my education. And then I went full-time into the nuclear industry. And in the nuclear industry, I was basically on a tactical team there. And then I went into basically assaulting and attacking different nuclear plants around Canada to test their security like a terrorist would. So like a red cell kind of idea. Went into their management, and then essentially I wanted to do a little bit more. So I tried out for special operations. And I became part of the Canadian Special Operations Regiment as a Special Forces operator. Very fast-paced, high-output kind of unit, and trained alongside a lot of foreign Special Forces units. Several deployments into Central America. My job was basically to help advise and assist different counterterrorism teams internationally, improve their counterterrorism abilities to limit basically drug flow and crime coming northbound into Canada. I specialized in a lot of the jungle intelligence and high angle kind of world of special operations, and then had a little bit of some personal and family challenges. I was away from home quite a bit and started to feel kind of the stressors of the job. So I left special operations and joined Toronto Police, which didn't seem to be that much easier, to be quite honest, but is very unique. I signed my my paperwork to become a Toronto cop shoulder to shoulder with a guy named Jeremy, who actually co-authored and co-started this program with me. But right away, I was having some challenges, and I had a lot of benefits of different kind of peer support and mentorship throughout policing, and to actually get myself on track and to get support from a lot of the national services that help veterans, such as Veterans Affairs Canada, the Royal Canadian Legion, and the Department of National Defence. And they help kind of piece my life back together. But eventually, at the end of 2018, I got my badge as a police officer and completed about 6 months of training, and started going out on the street. And right away, within 2 weeks, we had this really wild 911 call. And essentially, this person went into a bar and they picked a fight with everybody in the bar and got beat up. And then the person went to the next bar, did the exact same thing, got beat up. And then they went into a third bar, picked a fight with somebody again, and got beat up. And everybody called 911. And so we were there, lights and sirens, everybody buzzed downtown, and everything was calm by the time I got there. And I was the rookie, and they're like, Dale, go question the guy that's in the ambulance, because we think he's lying. So I go in there, and right away I see that the person's a military guy with a bunch of military tattoos. And I said, oh, hey, you're in the military. And that's when he tried to fight me. And long story short, I yelled at him and told him I was in the military. And I kind of like was pretty stern on the guy. And right away, we kind of found some common ground and ended up like hanging out, crying, figuring stuff out. And I was like, hey, man, listen, like you can get your life back on track. This is how I got my life back on track. So that 911 call was very unique for me. And I went back into my police station at like 3:30 in the morning, and I ran into like one of the bosses a couple levels above me. And I was like, hey, staff, like, what are we doing for military in Toronto Police? And he's like, Dale, it's 3:30 in the morning. Send me an email. And he just kind of walked away. And so I did. I sent the email at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and the email got passed around. And when my shift was over at 7 a.m., they stopped me at the door and they're like, hey, the unit commander wants to talk to you. And that's how this whole journey of starting what now is to the Military Veterans Wellness Program. Next slide. So our whole motto with this program is that nobody fights alone. This is a community policing initiative that is established in 2019 by veterans and for veterans. And the whole purpose, next slide, is to prevent veteran suicide and homelessness across the city of Toronto, bring dignity and prosperity to our military veterans, and improve our public safety. So that's the whole purpose and the goal behind this driving force of creating the Military Veterans Wellness Program. Next slide. So we can't do this. We can't do this on our own. So policing is very much a team journey. And the interesting thing about diversity and about hiring diverse, unique populations is myself and Jeremy both have a very unique lived experience. And together we were able to see not only a unique problem, but also a unique solution. And that's what got us on this journey of creating this. But to make an impact on social change and to improve society, the police can't do that on their own. Essentially, the police are the public and the public are the police, and together they need to work together to help drive social change. So that's the idea of community policing and partnerships. So that's the philosophy that promotes proactively addressing social issues through prevention and problem solving. So the two of us were able to start building a great team. So we sat back and we said, okay, who are the best people in the world at solving veterans homelessness and veteran suicide, and how can we bring them all together? So that's where the police are uniquely positioned to be leaders in public safety, so we can actually reach out to all these organizations, help building strong connections and strong partnerships, which is interesting because it's non-positional influence. So there's no one forcing anybody to do this, and there's no one paying anybody to do this. We're all gathered together to do what's right, and to do what's right for the military veteran population that essentially fought for us overseas, and we need to fight for them back in Canada because they bear the brunt of war, and we need to respect that, and we need to help them as much as we can when they get back here. But police can't do this kind of stuff alone. There's no real social issue in society that the police can just start arresting their way out of. So it doesn't matter how many military veterans we arrest, we're not going to make a dent into veteran suicide and veteran homelessness if we just keep on arresting people. So we need to have other unique approaches, and that's the community policing aspect. So our partners include everybody from the Government of Canada, Veterans Affairs Canada, Department of National Defence, the Legion, the military, the RCMP, private psychological organizations, entertainment organizations, rock bands, social media companies, entertainers, paramedics, the associations, the universities, and the hospitals. And we were able to bring all these people together and say, okay, you're the best at this in the world. Now we need you to contribute your piece of the pie so that we can make huge social change. And that led us down this path of a community policing program called the Military Veterans Wellness Program. Jen.
So, Aaron, what really stands out to me in what you've shared is that how intentional your approach was in creating this program and thinking about how that the services provided through policing can have a positive impact in treatment of veterans that you meet in the streets. And while your work is more grounded in policing than most of us on the call, what we see every day here at Acclaim are similar challenges on a different level, existing across industries, whether it's healthcare, whether it's municipalities, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's healthcare, any environment where people are operating under pressure. And at Acclaim, what we've done to apply a similar sort of model on a different level, what we've done to help our clients within the mental health sphere is we've built what we call the mental health ecosystem. It's a connected ecosystem that brings together what's available in our communities through public health care, what's available through the employers we support with employee benefits, what's available through private healthcare services, and then what's available through Acclaim. And by taking all of these pieces and looking at them when we're working with individuals who have mental health concerns, or with an employer who has mental health concerns with impacting their individual's abilities to be safely in the workplace, is we've taken all of these different domains and brought them together in what we call our mental health ecosystem. And this ecosystem connects resources to an employee in need, and helps build the best care program to address the specific individual need of the person that we're working with at the time. We're looking at individuals holistically, much like you do with your the program that you built. You're looking at individual needs of veterans and where they are in their experience in that moment. We're looking at the same thing. We're looking at what's impacting people at home, what's impacting them in the workplace, what's impacting in day-to-day life, and how is that impacting their ability to be in the workplace and to be healthy and stay actively at work. So success isn't just in one service, it's in a framework, much like you've developed, and more importantly, the partnerships that bring the framework to life. And with thought and planning, we can apply this sort of framework across employment workplaces to support internal staff in their daily practices. I know when I first started listening to you, I was like, well, how does this relate to most of the people that are on this call today? And really, the end goal of everything for your program, for our program, for employers' benefits programs, for their disability management programs, is to get people the help they need. And so there are ways to do this with a general population, within your own benefit program, within your own care program in your workplace, within the partnership you can have at Acclaim. And so, Aaron, can you tell us more about your training program and what makes it successful within the groups that you work with?
Yeah, of course. So the The issue was a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding about what to do and how to connect a veteran that's struggling to the people that can support them. So there was a lack of understanding there. And at the end of the day, like a lot of people want to help a military veteran that fought in combat for our well-being and got blown up. But there's some challenges around stigmas. As a police officer, you got to break down those social stigmas because a lot of things around the military veteran population are used to being the helper and they're not used to being the helped. You spoke about frameworks, and it's interesting as like a grassroots movement, um, running from the ground up, and all our partners. My little sister is actually a defense scientist with the military, and she was able to create our like all our frameworks. So we have a structural framework, a logic model, and performance measurements, and those were kind of like key documents to help like keep me on track and to make sure our bosses could realize that this action equaled this logical outcome. But yeah, the frameworks even for us were super important. So the training program is really about how a police officer can better support a vulnerable population on the street. But once again, the police cannot create this program on our own. We need partnerships and we need the community policing aspects. So for the life of me, I'm not going to be able to explain what PTSD is, but we need a doctor or a school or an educational facility of some sort to explain what PTSD is. And then we need to have a police officer take that knowledge and translate it for another police officer so that it's police officer talking to police officer, not doctor talking to police officer. And that's called knowledge translation. And that's probably one of the most successful things that we did with this program, is because the police officer doesn't need to know how to diagnose PTSD, and they don't need to know what medication to give a person for PTSD. What they need to know is if a person has PTSD, what are they going to be doing? How are they going to be acting? And how can I de-escalate that person with PTSD? So it's important that we get the knowledge from the academic source, but we need to do knowledge translation so that it's the police officer talking to the police officer about what's specific for them to do their job. And I think that's the heart of where this program really is successful. So every slide in our training program is has great knowledge translation. So it's by cops for cops, and the whole goal of every slide is de-escalation. So with that in mind, we were able to take all of our partners' information and build a product that police officers know is relevant, they know is accurate, and it cuts through the weeds. And at the end of the day, training time there's not an abundance of training time, especially when there's so many 911 calls out on the street. So if we could train all week or all day or all month, we would love to, but we can't, because the demands of the city are pretty high. So you got to pick and choose the balance between training and operations. And with this program, we were able to keep it at 1 hour and basically trim out the unnecessary information that a police officer doesn't need through knowledge translation. But the topics are very straightforward, and it's what's life like in the military? So what is a person actually, what's the lifestyle like? What is their common struggles and challenges during service and after service? And how do they get into a crisis? What's involved in their crisis? What crimes are they involved in and why? How to de-escalate that military veteran? Because at the end of the day, it's not a popular topic, but at the end of the day, military veterans are really, really good at war and really, really good at murder, essentially, which is the Canadian criminal definition. And that's what they do when they go overseas. They plan how to take down targets. And as a police officer, you have to understand that you're dealing with somebody that has a huge capacity for violence, and you need to know how to de-escalate and how to negotiate. And then you have to have an idea what the social services are that actually support people. So not every police officer understands what the Royal Canadian Legion does, or the Department of National Defence does, or what Veterans Affairs Canada does. So we had to explain and teach that. And then we had to give the police officers some guidance on what they can actually do to help that military veteran so there's not a secondary 911 call. So the goal is actually to finish the problem and not to have more problems after your 911 call. And with this training, it guides a police officer through that process. But I want to talk a little bit about de-escalation, because that's an important topic that's very unique to how a police officer will negotiate with a military veteran. And I think that every time you guys are on a phone call with a client or talking to a person in the office, there's some de-escalation there, and then there's some negotiation there. And it's not necessarily like you're negotiating them to drop the knife, but I think the concepts are still very important. And I think at the end of the day, the police officers are trying to influence, they're trying to de-escalate, negotiate, but the whole goal is influencing behavior change. So how can I influence that person in front of me to have some behavior change? And the behavior change I want could be drop the knife, but it also could be, hey, let's go get you some help so that you get your life on track. And so I think there's a lot of takeaways in that. So the very first part of the behavioral influence stairway is active listening. So active listening is about keeping a good conversation, and it's about having good hooks and good triggers. And the whole point of active listening is you're trying to do all these little tricks to essentially keep the conversation going. So the trick is called more pies. So M would be minimal encouragers, open-ended questions, reflecting or mirroring, emotional labeling, paraphrasing, I statements, effective pauses, and summarizing. So you're trying to do all those little tricks while you're in a communication with somebody, and you're trying to use hooks to hook them into the conversation, and you're trying to avoid triggers. So a simple example would be if the person's wearing a Blue Jays jersey, you could say, hey, I like the Blue Jays too. And that person's immediately going to get more connected to you, and they're going to enjoy the conversation better. But if you say, I hate the Blue Jays, they're not going to like you very much, and they're going to be more against having that communication. So you're trying to climb this stairway from left to right, and your goal is to get into the behavioral change area, but you need to walk up all the individual steps to get there successfully. So active listening is all about having a good conversation and keeping the conversation good so you can be likable. Next is empathy, and empathy is a very complicated one. I'm going to use a very ridiculous example, so bear with me there, Jan. But let's say you're talking to somebody that has a huge zit on their nose, and they were suicidal. I could say, hey, you should wash your face, and maybe you won't have a zit. But that actually might be true, but it's a very sympathetic response. The person knows that you could be right, but they're not going to be very happy to hear that. If I said an empathetic response, which would be like, hey, I had a big zit on my nose last week. I was super depressed about it too, but these things happen, and I got through it too, but I know what it's like. I was super low, just like you. When I say an empathetic response like that, it doesn't actually solve their problem, but it makes me and the other person have a better connection, and it puts me in their shoes. Now, it's very, very hard for a police officer to be able to put yourself in a military veteran's shoes that's used to being in a gun battle in Iraq, or blown up in Afghanistan, or lost friends in a crazy scenario at sea or in the air. Most cops don't have a comprehension of what life like that would be like. So you have to teach them. And the whole point of the first 3 chapters of the program is cultural competency. So if I can give a person cultural competency training, they can put themselves in that veteran's shoes, and they can connect with them better. So instead of saying something like, oh, that must have been very hard, I don't know what that would be like, which would be an empathetic response, you can actually get more substance into that and create a better connection. So at this point, all you're trying to do in the negotiation is keep the conversation going, provide empathy, and build your rapport and be likable. As you're climbing up those stairs, you're going to get into some unique conversations with a veteran specifically. And that's where I think there's actually some crossover into what you guys all do. So at the end of the day, we want to influence the military veteran to actually get help, drop the knife, get help, recover from their problems. And there's going to be some issues around a military veteran's culture and stigma that are going to be little things that a negotiator has to climb through. So, for example, the military culture teaches a person to be very selfless. So if a person's very selfless, they might actually not seek help for themselves. They might want to help everybody else except themselves. They also might be very loyal, and they're taught loyalty very early on, and that might make them more prone to survivor's guilt. They learn a lot of stoicism through the military, and when you're stoic, you can suffer through all of your problems, which I'm super good at. And you can have a high moral code, which leads to some frustration and betrayals. And you can believe in excellence all the time. And I could see a spelling mistake in one of these slides, and that would destroy me for the rest of the day because I believe in like a high degree of excellence, and I'm very shameful of my imperfections. And little things like that, the negotiator is going to have to understand by understanding about their culture, and then understand how to show empathy and build rapport and navigate those issues around the military veteran to start showing some hope and to start showing like maybe a positive conclusion to the situation. But at this point, we're at the rapport stage. And at this point, we actually haven't tried to solve the problem at all. We're only trying to basically create a good friendship and create a good connection. Once we feel like we have enough rapport, we can start to actually influence them. So, can you take a step over here? Can you take a step over there? Can you put the knife down and stand beside it instead of holding it in your hand? Can you do this? Can you do that? And you can start to test and see you have some influence. Once you have your influence, then you can start to problem solve. And that's what I'm very good at, is problem solving. The first part is very difficult for me sometimes. But now we're problem solving, and you can use them to help problem solve as well. And now that they have a little bit of hope and they like you and you have a connection, now you're into the influence stage, and then you're looking for the behavioral change. So we need to teach police officers how to do that because it's a very, very tricky, unique culture that has a super high capacity for violence. And the behavioral change we really do as police officers is we connect them to social services. And we say, hey, when you talk to these people in the social services world, don't be mean to them. Don't swear at them. Don't raise your voice. Be very nice to them. They're there to help you. They don't speak your language, but they're trying their best to help you. And you need to do this, 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 and the other thing to actually get into the behavioral change. So we'll talk about how we refer a little bit later in the presentation. But that's essentially the heart of the training program. But the training program is only successful if people like want to do it and they enjoy doing it. Otherwise, they're going to turbo click through the entire training program, not listen to it, and your 1 hour training program will be done in like 26 seconds. So the buy-in is something that was very challenging to do for us, and we had to do a little bit of trial and error with that. But a lot of the higher ideals around like vets serve us and we must be able to serve them. That's what we do. And they fought for us and got messed up overseas, and we got to help them recover because without them, maybe we would be speaking a different language, or maybe we'd be taken over by another country. All the processes are very, very easy. Police officers are very busy on the road. And so to make the processes as easy as possible to not burden the front line was the biggest issue. There's really no wasted time in the training. Everything is like very simple and very straight to the point, and nothing is tricky. Nothing is like pulling the wool over their eyes. It's very, very like A plus B equals C, and you spell it out as simple as possible for them. I also try to do my best to make the training entertaining. If the training's boring, the training's boring, but if the training's exciting, the training's exciting. So I ask myself, hey, what do police officers like and what do military veterans like? And I went out and I found partnerships with as many entertaining things as I could. So we made partnerships with a famous rock band, and we got a rock video into the training program. We got some social media influencers. We got TED Talks, and we found stuff that cops will genuinely enjoy and added that into the training to supplement it here or there. But once we got all the training completed, the next step was accessibility, and the Toronto Police Chief waived all the fees for the entire Military Veterans Wellness Program training. So it's hosted on the Canadian Police Knowledge Network, and we waived all fees so that every cop in Canada can access the training program for free. And then we went on a sales spree to basically teach people about what this is. So that went not just nationally, but also globally. So the training's also been harmonized for Interpol's Global Learning Academy and available for all 196 Interpol countries. So far, just in Canada, there's about 150 agencies that have completed the training and about 25,000 completions, not including the 30,000 RCMP and the 10,000 OPP, considering that there's about 72,000 cops in Canada. So I say we're doing pretty well right now. And Yeah, so I think the training was one of those things that we wanted to get the biggest impact on, and there was in the early days there was a toss up between doing in-person training and online training, and during COVID it kind of steered us into the online training, but yeah, the more people we can train out of my office to support a military veteran, the better and the safer I think our communities are going to be. And that's kind of been my role within Toronto Police, is supporting the military veterans in Toronto and beyond.
Well, what you're describing, really, the your de-escalation process really resonates with how we approach case management at Acclaim, but it's really applicable also within an employer's work environment. When those individuals come into your office, or when you see an individual struggling in the workplace and personality changes and so on, um, having the skills to be able to have conversations with those particular individuals to tease out what's going on, and um, separating the workplace environment from the person and their mental well-being is a really important tool to be able to have. And I think that these steps that you've outlined on a different level than with policing can be applied in our long-term care facilities, in our warehouse environments, across a variety of different industries. In many cases, what you described through policing, those early conversations that are needed to build rapport quickly, to assess, to guide, that really mirrors what employers can do within their organization. And it really strongly mirrors what a case manager does here at Acclaim, and breaking down those barriers to be able to get the information we need to support an individual through their recovery process, to make sure that they're accessing the care that they need, to make sure that they are doing the things they need to do to make sure they stay healthy and stay in the workplace, or that when they're off, that they're accessing the care that they need. So, what might be considered high stakes negotiation in policing is in many ways the standard starting point for our team when we're supporting an employee, whether it be as a third party adjudicator, as an HR manager, as a manager, or even as a colleague, to get to the bottom of things. At Acclaim, our ability management consultants are trained in a similar approach, and our intake and our follow-up meetings are guided along these same similar principles. And we, much like you're saying, we really understand that every conversation with an employee is not a transaction, but a conversation that requires a lot of trust and careful navigation, especially when you're talking to individuals about their health and very personal details. So I think for Acclaim and for an employer who's dealing with this, is really identifying who's going to be the navigator in your conversations. When we're looking at our mental health and our mental health ecosystem, we have a navigator who has careful conversations with employees who are struggling with mental health challenges, and so we have somebody who is a qualified practitioner to talk to people with those mental health struggles, and who has very strong knowledge of what's available to the employee to help them in their recovery process. So whether it be that they need some help through community interventions available through public funding, whether there's benefits that need to be accessed, whether there's different resources that need to be applied in the recovery journey, that navigator needs to have the trust and build that empathy and build that relationship that you were talking about, Aaron, to be able to have the individual understand, first of all, come to a realization that they need help. Next, come to the realization that there's help available, and then be open to accepting that help. And that's a very careful conversation. So your steps really do draw a perfect picture of how to build that. Our navigators, like I said, are within social services and mental health specialty. For employers, yours might be an internal occupational health and safety person. It might be your wellness and benefits coordinator. It could be individuals that you've trained in mental health first aid. If you're using external parties, they may have a nurse, or you might use a third-party provider like Acclaim to help navigate those stairs. But that trust building allows for that access to information from the individual, which then allows us to understand what is needed for the individual. It can be mental health, it could be somebody with a physical condition. Either way, I can see how your de-escalation process can apply to help individuals who need support to get better. Erin, when you have a situation that reaches a point where support is needed, how does that referral or the engagement process typically begin? I can understand that, your officers are out on the street talking to the public, and they're coming upon these individuals, and you're in a tighter time frame than perhaps an employer might have. How do you begin that engagement and referral process, and what have you seen that works best to get individuals connected early to the support they need?
So at the end of the day, a police officer is going to arrest a person or apprehend them under the Mental Health Act, but we want to do a little bit more. And cops are they're not social workers, they're not doctors, they're not peer supporters. They have to fill the role as police officers. But the goal is to not have a repeat 911 call of the exact same issues. And to do that, we need partnerships with city and community and federal partners. So what we were able to build is a military veteran assistance forum. So all that is the police officer will be roadside with the military veteran, under person in crisis legislation, they can have verbal consent to make a connection between the veteran that's struggling on the side of the road and the federal government, specifically Veterans Affairs Canada, the Royal Canadian Legion, and the Department of National Defense OSIS program, by clicking the submit by email button. So right away, it's super easy for a police officer to do that. It's a 1-minute form. You click the button and the form leaves the police car and goes to the police only email inboxes of those 3 organizations. And through like a memorandum of understanding, all 3 organizations will call the military veteran, and they can offer a Veterans Affairs caseworker, an advocate from the Royal Canadian Legion, and peer supporters through the Operational Stress Injury Social Support Program. And all 3 of those organizations are federal, and they can touch the whole country end to end. So we're able to have a referral system for any police officer to use for a military veteran in crisis, to get all the support that matters at the federal level. So we've had about 130 referrals just within Toronto, which is give or take about one a week, one every 2 weeks, and we have about 250 across Canada. So those are at times, they're extremely violent scenarios that have been successfully de-escalated and then referred into for help, and hopefully not a repeat scenario after the fact. But yeah, it's through an easy referral system because cops can't function as the doctor or the social worker or the caseworker. We have to pass it on to our partners. So it's very much, it hits the last line of defense, which is the police officer, and then we have to get everybody on board right away.
Can I ask how long this program's been in place?
I started building it in 2019. It was probably fully built by 2021, 2022. We did a soft launch, and 6 months later, we did an official launch mid-2022, I believe. And since then, it's been steadily growing across the country and globally.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But that's been a mix of me doing this program on a part and full-time basis, as well as other policing duties. But the interesting thing about this program is designed to help military veterans on the streets. But a lot of police officers have military experience, and the closest population to a military veteran is going to be a police officer, or maybe a paramedic or a firefighter or a correctional guard or something like that. But it's very, very hard to teach people about their mental health, especially cops. And this program actually teaches a cop about a military veteran's mental health. And it's kind of working as a mental health training program for cops in disguise. And we've had a lot of police officers see the training, see the issues, see some similarities in themselves, and then ask us to get a referral for them. So we've actually done about 20 referrals for police officers to get these kind of supports for military veterans because they were in the military in the past, or that they've kind of decided that it's time to take their health into more of a priority because they're recognizing some of the challenges. So internally, it's been very, very successful. And with the RCMP, the definition of a military veteran is a Canadian Forces soldier that's essentially retired or gotten out of the military, and give or take a bunch of other things, they become a military veteran. But the RCMP also uses veteran as their police officers that are retired, and they get the same supports, give or take, as a military veteran. So we've been able to actually adopt this program for police and military veterans, and therefore better help internally, which is nice because it's hard for a cop to raise their hand and say, hey, I have a problem. But if they go through an external resource like this, it's easier for them to navigate the internal social stigmas of what they're dealing with and get help kind of in a unique way. And that's why a lot of the associations and a lot of the command teams really like the benefits of this program. The next slide there. So there's no real easy way to do national change in policing. So no politician should be able to force a police officer to do anything except if it's written and mandated in the Criminal Code of Canada, the Police Services Act, and a few things like that. But no one should be able to sit there beside you as a politician and say, I demand you arrest that person, because we didn't build our system like that. So there's no way to force everybody in policing to do the same thing unless you legislatively do it. So I had to go on a bit of a sales spree across the country and show everybody that this is important to do. This is the science behind the program. Here's the free access to the program. Here's the free access to the referral form. Here's some understanding of how it benefits your community. This is how easy it is. And we were able to go on basically a shopping spree, a sales spree across the country. And currently we're sitting at about 80 police services that have fully or partially implemented the program, which accounts for about 79% of Canadian cops, which is great because now we have cops all over the country that are now supporting military veterans, because I have friends from coast to coast that I've served with, and a lot of people suffer, and a lot of people higher than the Canadian standard are homeless and kill themselves through suicide, and that they're in crisis and suffering. And we got to do what we can do to help them. And spreading this program nationally is a good start to that. And it's been interesting because one of the ways that I did actually spread this is through social media. And I know nothing about social media, but with our partnerships, I was able to essentially learn how paid advertising works and how targeting works. And I was able to essentially put my message out so police officers could see my message across Canada, and then they could actually start employing the Military Veterans Wellness Program through social media, because we need to create awareness and I need to learn how to do sales. But policing didn't teach me how to do sales. My partners in the music business taught me how to do sales. They just applied selling concerts to selling public safety. So it's very, very interesting what you can get out of these partnerships that you didn't actually expect to get out. But yeah, understanding music sales actually helped me to improve public safety, and not only across Canada, but cross-sectorally, like Corrections Canada, Toronto Paramedics, and Toronto Fire. They all want to help military veterans too. They all can benefit from the training, and they all can benefit from de-escalation. And all the populations are very similar. And essentially, at the end of the day, everybody wants to help. They just need to understand how. And we essentially made this work cross-sector so that all fire, paramedic, and correctional officers can also get this training to also be able to understand how to make themselves safer and support a military veteran that suffered for us overseas. But to make this really work, we needed strong political support. So we got the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police to endorse it. The Premier's office, Doug Ford, helped at its infancy, believe it or not, and they helped get the right people at the table. It's been presented at the Standing Committee of Veterans Affairs about suicide prevention. The military uses it in their structural framework. It's been fully endorsed by the VAC, National Defense and Public Safety Ministers, as well as the Prime Minister's office. And once we had those stamps of approval, it became easier for police chiefs to get on board the program and also leverage it. But the military is an interesting place because the thought process is geopolitics and world politics, not city politics like I'm used to in Toronto sometimes. But a lot of military veterans have fought alongside other military veterans from many other countries. Next slide. So we were able to essentially share this in our international communities. So we shared the entire framework and program with Australia, and we sit on Australia's planning committee to develop this entire program for them. It's never going to be a direct copy and paste because our systems and our cultures are so different. But what we can do is take the concepts and components of the training and components of the way it works and just change it a little bit to work for their system. We did it with Interpol and harmonized it for the global community of 196 countries, as well as the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And I was actually deployed to Ukraine last year from January to April as part of a Canadian international policing mission, and was able to help build this for the Ukrainians because right now Ukraine is obviously under conflict, and they're going to have a hard time with their police officers to manage and support a population that has seen war. And we were able to do that overseas. And it's been kind of a blessing. It's been a very unique, interesting run of like the last 8 years of my career as a Toronto police officer. But I really learned a lot about the importance of collaboration, the importance of working with different kind of partners and leveraging all sorts of different experiences to bring everybody to the table to improve the country of Canada, which at the end of the day, everybody wants to do that. And essentially, my dream is to have a Canadian society where everybody is positioned in such a way to support military veterans, because police are the last line of defense. And if we have everybody involved into supporting a military veteran, less crisis and less extreme violence is going to come to police officers. And organizations like Acclaim and what you guys are doing helps me do that. And it helps Canadians understand how to actually help a veteran and understand the issues around veterans, and to remember that that veteran suffered hard so we can have the way of life we want. So it's been a very incredible career to end up doing what I'm doing and to chasing this passion project, which I was only able to identify and contribute because I had a unique lived experience. But that's the Military Veterans Wellness Program. And I think there's definitely a lot of takeaways and a lot of parallels to what Acclaim does. But if anybody ever wants to reach out, my email address is at the bottom of the screen there, and we'd be happy to chat.
Aaron, this is really a great example, a great picture of how one person can make a difference. I mean, you were a rookie, arguably someone on the bottom rung. You identified a problem in the instant, went straight to your leadership afterwards, and spearheaded a solution that led to leadership buy-in and growth nationally and internationally. And a lot of us see this in our day-to-day experience. We look at what's happening in our employer environment, what's happening for us as a third-party provider, what's happening with the cases we're managing, the stats that we see. And we can have impact by taking that data and that experience, understanding where the challenges are. And a lot of times it can start with a very simple solution. Let's see what our benefits have, and let's look at what help we can provide to people, so that access to care, understanding how people can get support in their recovery journey. It really does that's the first step, understanding what the experience is in the work environment. And when we're looking at mental health, where are the mental health concerns coming from? Is there a certain sector of the business? Is there a certain project that people are working on? Is there change happening and we're seeing more cases? And then how can we address that? How do we figure out what's the key to solving that? And when it comes to health, and when it comes to healthcare, and when it comes to veterans, there's not one solution. There's a million different solutions you can have, but taking one area of that solution and figuring out what the steps are to resolve it is really important. So to your point, looking at training, how can we train our staff to be more resilient? How can we train managers to recognize more readily what people are going through? How can we work how that de-escalation process? What could something like that look like in our training environment? I know the police identified that one thing that works within the service is identifying in each other when mental health when mental well-being is changing, and they have training programs to help the members recognize in each other when somebody is going down a road to mental unwellness, or which can eventually turn to a mental health condition, and how to help individuals get the resources they need to do that. And that can be mirrored in other environments too. When you see your coworker is suddenly not attending work regularly, is coming into work disheveled when normally they're perfection in the workplace, when their work product is suffering, they're missing timelines, the output, how they're speaking to colleagues, to customers changes. A lot of times that is somebody who's on the road to mental illness. A lot of times that is something happening outside the workplace impacting. And you know that when you know somebody well enough. But how do you approach that? That's a difficult step to take. And training is the first step to help in there. So for employers, one of the first steps is to recognize changes, and then to recognize how to escalate that to somebody who can provide that assistance. For us in disability management, our approach with people, as we connect with them in our daily tasks, is, like you said, finding those areas that we can build empathy and build connection, to build that trust, to be able to help us help them direct their medical care and participate in those treatments and get the proper assessments and get the care that they need. For employers as well, and for the HR and the benefits coordinators out there, understanding what's impacting your clients and your employees, and building benefit packages and support programs to proactively assist individuals and assess and support them in their wellness journey. What areas are you seeing medical spend going? How can you further support that? What other things can bolster programming that is already being provided? And this can look like taking steps forward and making progress. We're not going to get perfection in the first step. We're never going to get perfection. You heard about Erin's journey. Erin's journey, going from that first call to developing a worldwide network of training and support, and he's still building, and he's still working on it, and still adjusting when it needs to adjust. But having a plan, building that roadmap, understanding what goals you have as you're going down that road, and building those performance indicators to understand that the program is working. Where it's working, build on that. Where it's not working, how can we course correct that and bring them back onto the roadmap to success? You want to be strategic in your spend. You don't want to initially spend money across just spread money out across a number of different programs. Focus on one thing at a time, and look at what areas are most impacted by mental health or whatever the disability happens to be that you're focusing on, and how can we have impact in that one area. And then, are you able to do this all in-house, or do you need help? Do you need to reach out to a third party? Can your benefits provider help you identify areas and resources that you might look like? But I think, Erin, you can disagree with me, but I think listening to your story, momentum is really the key. Keeping it moving. Don't let it drop. If you let somebody think that you've forgotten about it, then they forget about it, and it becomes less important to them as well. So momentum, using the resources around you that to help you move it forward is going to be really important, staying on top of that. And then what we've seen at Acclaim in terms of the impact of mental health support, when we have employers that have mental health problems and we have been able to implement a mental health ecosystem, we've seen significant results come out of that, and small changes can have results too. So instead of having siloed programs, mental health treatment is most effective when delivered through collaborative multidisciplinary approach. So one doctor is generally not going to be the be all end all of curing the problem. You'll often need to look at what's happening at home, what's happening in the workplace. Are there financial concerns? Are there legal concerns? And are there resources available to address this? And so our mental health ecosystem and our navigator help connect people to all different types of resources to help them in their recovery. And what we see when we've put these into place, within the first 6 months, we've seen a 50% a reduction of symptoms within the first 4 weeks of program, and another 50% within the 4 to 8 weeks, which is a huge improvement than when an individual is solely seeing their GP. GPs are great. They have a lot of knowledge, but they don't necessarily have time to drive that bus. And so somebody like a navigator is the person that can help drive people towards the support that they need. We've seen a great reduction in time off. And we've based that on what the healthcare provider has predicted at the onset of a claim versus the results when you get a navigator involved and you're directing individuals towards the appropriate care. We've seen an average of more than 40 work weeks saved in lost time over a year for an employer. And depending on your size, that scales up. And 40 work weeks saved is a lot of money saved in lost time. And then we also saw LTD transition avoided in at least 17% of cases where the healthcare provider predicted that the individual would be going to healthcare. So while it seems like what Erin is speaking about is totally unrelatable to most of us on our daily lives, it really isn't. It's I'm not going to many police calls. I'm not going to police calls, and I'm not very as impacted with the veteran community in crisis situations. It happens in communities all over the place. We hear about it, but rare is the time that any of us are directly involved and are able to have any sort of a positive impact on that. But what we do see is a lot of challenges within the workplace that we can help people recover from. And I see Aaron waving at me and his hand up.
I just wanted to pile on a point there. We first connected people to like the best doctors and supports available through Veterans Affairs Canada, and they had a caseworker and they had an advocate through the Royal Canadian Legion. They had access to all the money and supports they could want. But what we didn't realize until the program kept growing a little bit is that the glue that held the entire situation together really was peer support. And not a lot of people have good peer support so police officers were acting as a bit of a peer support mechanism to help a person through that. And that's, I think, a huge takeaway that everybody can share is like be a good peer for that person and be on their team. And that peer support mechanism, that's what holds everything together from my perspective in my program. And that's why as soon as we can, we connect a person with federal supports, the non-traditional social supports as well as peer support to keep everything going and everything together. And that's what I think we can all learn from, is be a good peer to our neighbors that are suffering.
Thanks, Erin. I think what today's conversation really highlights is that though our environments may look different, the fundamentals are really the same. We're both working towards the same outcome, supporting individuals in moments that matter the most, and doing so in a proactive, humane, and collaborative way is of vital importance. We're at our end point here. I think, Lena, are we out of time? Yeah.
Yes,
If
we
anyone
are.
has any questions, you can send them over to us and we can answer those questions. I want to thank Aaron for his time and his collaboration on putting this together, and Lena for all the work she put into this. And I really hope that everybody has a takeaway from this that you can bring into your own workplace. And I hope this generates conversations for you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Erin. Thank you, Jean Marie.
Thanks.
Have a great day.